Look, I get it. Every single time a player is mentioned that might be traded in the NFL, Bears fans immediately jump to conclusions saying, is he a Bear? Is he coming to the Bears? That's the next Chicago Bears. And we are in the midst of lying season. But right now, there are two juicy Chicago Bears rumors going around that might actually end up being true. Rumors swirling that the Bears could potentially be prepping a big contract offer for top center Drew Dalman, and one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL has been given permission to seek a trade. And this one honestly makes so much sense. Trey Hendrickson, who has not only led the NFL in sacks the last 2 years, but his defensive coordinator when he was drafted by the New Orleans Saints was none other than Chicago Bears' Dennis Allen. And on top of that, he has only played for two different defensive coordinators in his entire career, Dennis Allen and Lou Anarumo. I want to talk about why trading for Trey Hendrickson actually would make a ton of sense for the Bears, depending on the cost, and I want to talk about the Drew Dalman rumor. Let's go ahead and get right into it. First off, let's quickly talk about the Drew Dalman rumors. Nothing is verified right now, and it's most likely just speculation. But I mean, it's not really hard to connect the dots here. I think every single Bears fan knows that we need to sign a center, and Drew Dalman is easily the top option on the market. There are also a couple of secondary options, but Drew Dalman is the top name available. And with how aggressive the Bears have been before free agency, most people do expect us to make a serious run at Drew Dalman and completely shore up this offensive line. The rumors are most likely just speculation, but our hope is that Ryan Poles actually does this and goes after a big time center. I think we're only a few days away from landing a new center. We just need to have a little bit of patience. Now let's go ahead and talk about what everyone wants to discuss, a Trey Hendrickson trade. And look, the first thing I have to mention is the Bears are actually one of the very few teams in the NFL that are in prime position to trade for a guy like Trey Hendrickson. Think about it. Rebuilding teams do not want to trade for 30-plus-year-old pass rushers. And while every contending team would love to trade for Trey, not very many of them have the cap space to acquire a guy like this and pay him what he wants. The Bears happen to be in a unique position here. Not only do we have plenty of cap space over the next 4 seasons, but we are also leaving a rebuilding phase, entering a win now mode, and ready to take on a trade like this. We have our quarterback on a rookie contract. We have a glaring hole at defensive end. And then we have tons of cap space and extra draft capital going forward. And a lot of people are going to immediately say, but aren't we rebuilding? We have been rebuilding for the last 3 years. It's been painful, but we have to realize now that this team is transitioning into win now mode. Now is the time when we can acquire veteran players. The rebuild is over, and we can trade for a 30-year-old pass rusher right now. And Trey Hendrickson is simply one of the best in the business. He has actually outperformed Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa and almost every other pass rusher in the NFL over the last 5 seasons. He's simply one of the most productive sack artists there are in the league, and he has 17 and a half sacks in each of the last 2 seasons, 35 total sacks. On top of that, there's a lot of familiarity here. Remember, Ben Johnson was familiar with Jonah Jackson, and then Ryan Poles was familiar with Joe Thuney. But it's Dennis Allen, who spent 4 seasons with Trey Hendrickson in New Orleans. He was the defensive coordinator when the Saints drafted him, and he played a huge part in developing Trey into the player he is today. On top of that, Trey has spent his entire NFL career playing with just two defensive coordinators. So it's not crazy to think that he would be interested in coming to Chicago to reunite with his former DC. It's also not crazy to think that Dennis Allen wouldn't be all for making a move like this. And this is an extremely underrated point of having this awesome of a coaching staff that Ben Johnson put together, having connections like this all around the league. Bears fans and media are going to talk about any player that becomes available, and as fans, we're used to that. So as soon as you see Bengals grant Trey Hendrickson permission to seek trade, you know there are going to be articles and videos coming. But unlike most of the crazy rumors and clickbait, Trey Hendrickson to the Bears actually makes a ton of sense. And the Bears are one of maybe a handful of teams that are in a position to make a move like this. To me, it comes down to the cost. We already know we'll have to give him a huge new contract, so I would not want to part with any first or second round pick. I also don't think I want to trade a third round pick this season either. I'm more willing to trade a third rounder as long as it comes in 2026. So to me, the biggest key in making this deal would come down to being able to keep our valuable picks this season. A couple of trade ideas I'll throw out there. Next year's third round pick would be my biggest hope. If the Bengals would accept that, I'd be all for it. But I've also seen people suggest maybe pulling off a pick swap this season. What if we sent the Bengals pick number 10 and they gave us pick 17? I don't think that would be enough, but if it was, I'm all for that as well. We would still get a very similar quality of player at pick 17 as we would at pick 10. So to me, that wouldn't even be a big deal at all. And that would be a huge win for the Chicago Bears. But the biggest point of this is after trading for Joe Tooney, the Bears have clearly shifted into win now mode. I made a video on that yesterday. If you missed it, be sure to check it out. But that doesn't mean we need to trade away our valuable draft capital for a ton of veterans. We need to keep all of our first and second round picks. But making one or two strategic moves for difference makers makes perfect sense. The cost to acquire the player is the most important factor here. When you talk about guys like Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons, they are franchise players, and those teams aren't going to trade them without getting significant draft capital in return. There's no way either of those players are traded without a first round pick being involved. And there's a chance it could take multiple first. Count me out on that. And this is where it's interesting here because Trey Hendrickson is just as productive as either one of those other two players, Parsons or Garrett, but he is not viewed as a franchise player by the Bengals. They no longer have a quarterback on a rookie deal. They don't have the flexibility that we do. Joe Burrow is getting paid huge money, and they don't have nearly as much cap flexibility as we do. On top of that, the Bengals already paid over $100 million on their offensive line over the last couple of off seasons. And they just franchise tagged T. Higgins, and they have to pay Jamar Chase potentially record breaking money. I believe the Bengals are going to try to take advantage of this year's edge rusher class and hope they can live without Trey Hendrickson. But they really cannot afford to give him a huge deal right now, and that's why this guy is on the market. The salary cap is real, and Ryan Poles' maneuverability with the cap over the last few seasons has put this team in a position where we can make trades like this. We couldn't do stuff like this over the last 3 seasons, but now we're in position to make a move like this. This is the flexibility that I've been talking about over the last few off seasons. Now, I wouldn't get your hopes up too much for an actual trade, but I do think you should expect that the Bears land a new pass rusher sometime in the next week. If we don't trade for Trey Hendrickson, we could sign someone like Josh Sweat or Khalil Mack or Matthew Judon or even Hassan Reddick or one of the other top pass rushers because there's a plethora of them that are about to be available in just 72 hours. This year's pass rush market is abundant in top talent, and the Bears have a chance to be aggressive and bring in another defensive end opposite of Montez Sweat that can get after quarterbacks and really take this defense to the next level. Just fixing the offensive line isn't enough. We need to upgrade the defensive line as well if we want to be serious about winning this season. And I believe the front office is serious about winning. The rebuild is finally over, and the Bears have shifted into win now mode. I've said it a couple times, but just in case you missed the video last night, I wanted to touch on that again because it makes perfect sense for why Trey Hendrickson might actually be a trade target for the Bears. The biggest hurdle to me is I think other teams might be willing to give up more than we are. I do not want to give up our second round pick this year, and the more I think about it, I do think he's probably worth at least a second round pick. Another team might be willing to pony that up, But for me, I really don't want us to trade any picks in the top 50. But I am extremely interested in trading for a guy as talented as Trey Hendrickson, as long as the price is right. The rebuild is finally over. Please remember to hit that like button for me. I appreciate everyone that supported this team and my channel over these last 3 years. This rebuild has been tough. Stay tuned. I have a ton more content on the way. And until next time, bear down.